Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Thriving Talk. Hope everyone has enjoyed the last episodes. This is another Dadson edition in which me, Tim, gets a chance to ask my dad, Tinku Thompson, questions. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. And I think when this episode is released, I'm not here in this country, in America. I will be, God willing, in Africa right now. But we will be doing some episodes about that later. But as of now, I'm doing good.
A quick reminder to all our listeners, Thriving Talk is available on all major platforms like iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and more. So we live in a world with many people are anxious and there's lots of anxiety going around. So today we're going to talk about anxiety. So as my first question, what is anxiety?
Okay. That's a good topic, especially in the days and times in which we are living. It's very good to talk about anxiety but what I'm going to do, at least for this episode, because anxiety can be spoken in different levels. We can get into the science and we can get into the medical aspects. We can talk on different depths, but the where I want to stick is that level at which common people can understand it. Okay. So when we talk about anxiety, you're right. We live in a world where there is way more anxiety-related things happening. Depression is increasing. It's an alarming rate. It's an epidemic right now. And then there are a lot of health issues related to that. But then we want to focus on anxiety. It's kind of a worry. It's kind of a tension. It's kind of a situation where somebody is really tensed about certain things. It could be said as experiencing worry, some uneasiness or nervousness, typically about something which is going to happen or something where they are anticipating, expecting an uncertain outcome. For example, let's say we say to somebody, tomorrow we are having a doctor's appointment where you will be given some shots, and then people can be very anxious about that. Somebody goes and doctor says, so I would like to do some more check, some additional tests, and the results will come in 3-4 days. Normally people have very anxious times not knowing what the outcome of those tests would be.
So that during that time there?
Yeah, during that time they can experience some uneasiness, right? So it could be anxious, you can be anxious. Anxiety can hit you sometimes when you want something very much and there is a feeling of uneasiness regarding that. And as I said, it could be experiencing that worry, feeling uneasiness, nervousness. So all those things can cause anxiety in a person's life. So yeah, you're right. We live in times where we hear news. Okay, I will give you one example. We all know that there are a lot of media things which are biased, and there is a lot of agenda, there is a lot of things. So you can be very much depressed and filled with anxiety after you read about some news items. You may, if you feel, if you start reading negative news for 15-20 minutes, you may feel very down and you may feel like everything is going to come to an end. And you read about banks getting closed or going bankrupt, some businesses going bankrupt, or some places where people have been laid off from work, or some tragic incident happens, some accident happens. So all of those things can trigger anxiety and make you anxious. And that's a very natural human response. But hopefully that makes sense about what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
Let me ask you, do you get anxious? Anxiety? No? No? I know you get anxious.
Could you tell me?
Oh, how many times I've seen?
What I'm
Before a medical appointment, you're anxious.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
So
like
that's
to.
that. Those are some good ones, but maybe we'll get into the details. But yeah, that's worry.
Yeah, worry.
Worrying about. A lot of
So,
times, I always say this, right? A lot of times we worry about things which 99% is not going to happen.
true. We're just worried about everything.
We are just unnecessary making up things and thinking about it. But yeah, sometimes it can happen, and sometimes it can be worry can be based on true facts.
Okay.
So it's one thing to have a concern about something, and anxiety can affect your health. So that's why it's important.
So, as my next question, I want to ask, what causes anxiety?
What causes anxiety? I think I answered that already.
Yeah, you kind of
But
already answered.
what I can do is I can go and say that anxiety are of different types. I'm not going to get into all the types, but one is called as acute anxiety. The other type is called as chronic anxiety, right? So you may know the meaning of acute and chronic, but let me explain. So acute anxiety is situational and time-based. It could be a momentary loss of self-composure or poise, but runs its course and people are back to on track. Just like I said, there is a medical result waiting, and then you're anxious.
So it's like a certain time.
Yeah, and the results comes and doctor calls or they say, oh, we didn't find anything. You're fine. You're good.
And then you're like,
You're okay. You're done. You're back on the track. You're moving on. That's acute, or something which is or you have an exam coming up, test coming up, and then you're nervous about that. You're anxious about that. Or sometimes, for all those football fans or sports fans, your team is playing and 5 minutes left, your team is losing, but there is a high chance they can win. So, you feel some tension and they're anxious. So those things. So those type of things.
People who go crazy for like those type
Yeah.
of things, they're so worried if their team is like down.
Yeah. So that's acute, right? But then there is another more problematic thing, this chronic anxiety. It's perpetually present in someone or is structured into the relationships. So that's chronic anxiety. It is not specific to any threat. So the other cases we were saying there was a threat, You could get a bad report, so you are anxious. That's one thing. So here, it's not related to any threat or any topic, any issue, any change, any circumstances. But it is all, it can trigger all these things. And all these things can trigger an anxious response, right? So when somebody is going through that anxious moments, there are even a little thing they can, blow out of proportion. They can get angry, mad, shout. All those things can happen. So sometimes people do suffer from chronic anxiety, and that may require some treatment, medical attention. There are many ways to deal with it, but at the onset, it's important to understand that there are some acute anxiety, which is okay. Everybody faces that. And then when you don't check on those acute ones, let it grow and becomes part of your system, it can lead you to chronic anxiety.
So now getting into like how can we avoid anxiety? Like,
how can we avoid anxiety? Yeah, we can avoid anxiety by avoiding a lot of things in life. But practically speaking, we cannot avoid everything, right? But there are things where we can do things. There are things which are under our control. We can do that, and we can hope for the best. We can have a positive outlook about life. All those things. But the point I want to bring is, at least how we can manage, is having trust in God, having faith in God. I'm going to bring a couple of Bible verses here, or a portion. Jesus says in Matthew 6:25, that is why I tell you not to worry about everyday life, whether you have enough food and drink or enough clothes to wear. Isn't life more than food and your body more than clothing? Look at the birds, they don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for your heavenly Father feeds them. And aren't you far more valuable to Him than they are? Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? So Jesus is saying, why do you worry about every day when God is going to care for you?
Yeah.
So it says that by worrying we cannot add a single moment to your life. That means by worrying we are not going to extend our life. When everybody has to go one day, we will go. But Jesus has promised that He will care for us. And there are different promises in the Bible where, Bible teaches us that we don't need to really worry because, in another version actually, it goes something like this. Maybe it makes a little bit sense. I want to just read it. Don't fuss about what's on the table at mealtime, or if the clothes in your closets are in fashion. Closet are not in fashion. There is far more to your inner life than the food you put in your stomach, more to your outer appearance than the clothes you hang on your body. Look at the ravens, free and unfettered, not tied down to a job description, carefree in the care of God, and you count far more than them. So, sometimes anxiety can be caused by greed and our, desire to have more and more things in life. But to me, the best thing is to have a positive outlook towards life, trust in God, have faith in God, and remember that nothing happens in our life without God's knowledge or understanding. Bible teaches us that every hair of your head is counted. But that's from a spiritual aspect, I would say. But there are other things, there are studies which says that if you are exercising, if you go out, get fresh air and all, it can help with all those things. But fundamentally, I think we need to have a good mindset about all this stuff.
So, how does anxiety affect spiritual life, or what does it have to do with it?
Yeah, as I said, anxiety affects physical life, and then it also affects spiritual life. For example, if you're worried and anxious, you won't be able to focus or concentrate or sincerely pray. You may be reading the Bible, but your mind is somewhere else. You may just be reading the letters, but not understanding or focusing on what it says. So it matters. So it can impact your spiritual life. But the counter to that is actually your spiritual disciplines. So what happens is, let's say I'm worried about something, I spend some time in prayer, tell the Lord, this is what it is. I can actually experience freedom and liberty and have faith and trust and experience that in my life. So, yes, it definitely impacts our spiritual life. Having a good, steady, strong spiritual life will actually help us to counter a lot of anxieties in our life, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. So now do you have any things you want to add, or any final thoughts you want to add?
Yes, I think what we need to understand is, if we are having bad attitudes, when I say bad attitudes, if we are having greed, want to have everything in life, want to show off things in life with our material possessions, and a lot of things like that, that can actually take us into a place where these things can be way more evident. And as I said earlier, we need to remember what Jesus said. He said to his disciples, don't worry. Simply Jesus said, because by worrying we cannot add a single moment to our life. If that is the case, then why do we need to worry about things? And if God cares so wonderfully for the wildflowers that are here today and gone tomorrow, don't you think that He won't care for us? So He will care for us. So we don't need to worry about what we eat, I'm saying For this, have a full trust in God.
Because God has everything covered.
And then if you have, if you feel like you are unnecessary worrying and all those things, talk to someone, pray, ask someone's help. Don't ignore anxieties in life. If you ever get into a cycle where you feel like you're always anxious about things and nervous about things, don't ignore it, but try to tackle it. If you cannot do it, seek out other people's help. Tell why you feel that. Some people can help you. Counselors can help you. Your elders or leaders, pastors can help you. So always seek help if you are going. Otherwise, this can end up in a chronic anxiety situation and it's a problem. So, as I said, I don't think acute anxiety is a problem. We can still avoid it, but sometimes it can happen. But at the same time, if you are consistently having these issues, we should, seek out help.
So thank you for sharing, and to all our listeners, today we talked about anxiety, and like we don't need to be anxious because God provides all our needs, and we can be calm because He'll provide all our needs, and we don't need to be anxious. To all our listeners, thank you for listening. In the coming weeks, we will be coming back with more Dadson editions of Thriving Talk, and I'll be asking more questions. As we said in the beginning, this episode is available on many different platforms. Do not forget to follow or subscribe to the Thriving Talk podcast on your favorite platform to receive new episodes as they get released. Also remember that my dad has a newsletter that goes out every other week, in which he shares a lot of good information. The link to the newsletter will be in the show notes. Feel free to subscribe to the newsletter. We'll be back, but until then, we don't need to be anxious because we can keep our trust in God, and we need to have a positive outlook.
Yes. And always remember, God cares for us, and we can completely trust Him in all circumstances of our life. God bless you all.